Advisors Club is now live.
That's funny. So
Notification
you
received.
tinkling. Took a tink.
Oh my God.
There you go, buddy. That's good stuff. Yoda's in the house.
Is there waters over there by you, John?
There is una agua.
Awesome.
Where's your coffee or your monster or something?
So, I have no clue. What are we doing?
I don't know. Frank's got all the ideas, he said.
I do? I didn't say
saw,
that.
well, I saw Dave's live, so I think we're
Yeah.
going to be held accountable to what.
Hold on a second.
What did Dave say we were doing?
I don't know, something about
I've
negotiating.
attached my mic to a different spot so it doesn't fall out. It's kind of, Did you see last week when my mic fell off? And as I went to catch it, my coffee went, and it just went all over my
I didn't catch that.
I did.
You did.
I was like,
You had a better angle, huh?
Yeah. And I'm looking at Oscar and like, Oscar's like,
You're glad. You should be lucky I didn't see that because I wouldn't have not said anything.
I couldn't choose fast enough what to say. I had so many that just scrolled through.
it's like the podcast when my belly started rumbling. And everybody just kind of looked as if to say, did we mention it? It's like,
Apparently someone's hungry.
it is 12:12.
All right. So, hey, all right. We're live.
We're live.
All right.
Good morning.
So, hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. We are here, the guys. You got John, Frank, Tim, and myself. And somebody may pop in, may not pop in. I don't know how that's going to work out, but we'll figure it out as we go. Quick reminders. If you're watching live, make sure that you type a capital L in the comments. And if you're watching it later on, an R for record it. And anything else that we need to talk about today? At the opening, anything new, anything new? All right.
Tim's hot shorts.
Right? It's warm out there today.
There's a tanning booth down the road. Anyways, so
We're all wearing sweaters.
all right. So we're gonna get started here, and we're gonna talk about negotiations. So we just wrapped up 4 weeks, right, of creative acquisitions.
Yep.
Wrapped it up with Batman himself, Chris Albin, joining us and getting to hear some of his words of wisdom. So today we figured that it probably makes sense to really continue the conversation with negotiations because that's a critical aspect of creative acquisitions. Yes?
It
is?
is critical.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So with that, let's start with Frank. Get some input and what's going on there.
I do often have students always asking about that, and I think I don't think they understand that it is negotiations because the way they position it is like, how do you come to the offer price, or, you know,
Right.
and we don't want to do that in a vacuum or a bubble. Like, we don't want to sit and come out with our offer without having first spoken with the homeowner, find out what they need. Well, oftentimes we know our seller, they just want our bottom line offer. What do you want? And I mean, that doesn't work. That is not how we're going to get the best price or come up with the best terms or just work out the best deal for ourselves and even the homeowner. Like, oftentimes we can actually get the homeowner more money when they didn't even realize it. So I guess the biggest place to start, or the first place to start, is we all are negotiating every day. We're all selling or negotiating all the time. Ever since you're a little kid, you were negotiating, right? So, right? When you're a little kid, you're always negotiating with your parents for whatever it is. You know, is it more time to stay up and watch something? Is it to have more than one cookie? We've been negotiating since the day we were born. And how do we do that, right? So what's the leverage or the bargaining chip that we have with that person we're negotiating with? So very simply, that, like, let's say if we talk about our parents and your kid and you're negotiating, or our spouse, and there's something that you want, we, as bad as we want whatever it is how much power or whichever leverage we give away in that conversation. The more detached from the outcome we can be, the more power and leverage we have over that person that has that something that they want to give us in exchange for something. So I guess when we're talking with our homeowner, building rapport with them, getting to know them, gaining their trust, and then not abusing that trust or that power that we have is also another part of it, because at the end of the day is we want to create a win-win situation. And oftentimes the seller is not giving us the ability to do that because they're so afraid of being taken advantage of, or they're so set on some outcome that they see. So in speaking with those homeowners, we do not want to jump right to the price. Oftentimes they want to hear it, but we got to build rapport, establish trust, find out what they need, so that we can create the best offer or scenario with that homeowner.
So, a lot of good stuff in what he was talking about and what he was saying. So, and we'll kind of maybe dissect it a little bit. But first, we do have Christian and Adam in here. They're going to be monitoring questions, so feel free to ask questions, and we'll get to them later on in this live session. So, a couple things that stood out for me was, well, the biggest thing that stood out for me was that the negotiations don't happen down the road; they happen from the beginning. You start doing your negotiation process from the very first conversation when you start identifying what that seller needs and wants, right?
Right.
There's the whole need and want conversation. So that's, for me, that's a lot of people miss that piece, that, and they think that, like you said, right, just get the information. Now let me go back to the office. I'll sit in my office with my partner, and we'll have a conversation about what we're going to do and how we're going to approach it, and then we go back and approach it, versus through the entire process having that conversation with the seller.
Yeah.
Like you said, not in a vacuum, right? So
Building the rapport, establishing the trust that you know what you're doing, and the best case scenario that you can do is you have so much rapport and trust that they're not going to sell that property to anybody else. So that's where we have all that power in that scenario, and then it's our responsibility not to abuse that or take advantage of it and create, like a all win, and you lost out. You could have got so much more. So there's definitely a balance that we need to be careful.
And that's the fear you were talking about, right? Because that's where people have been in the past, is where somebody comes in and violates that trust and then takes advantage of them.
Yeah, so, I mean,
tries to.
somebody up against a tax sale date or a foreclosure auction date with none of the power. If they don't take an offer now, they're going to lose the equity in their property. And so we have a huge bargaining chip. Now it's our responsibility to be responsible with that information and not take advantage in an unfair way. So, we don't want to be predatory. We don't want to be sharks. We want to make sure that we have a good reputation in the business, and that speaks volumes for ourselves, for even referrals. If, in this situation, 10 days to go, no other alternative, we could have, gave them $5,000 to walk and walked away with $100,000 or $200,000. At least they got $5,000. We could have did that, but we need to look at it and go, okay, now we have all the bargaining chips right now. What's fair? And then we need to approach it from that perspective. Especially that's the worst case scenario for your seller. No choice. I just need the next buyer to buy this, or I'm going to get nothing. So that's their worst position they could be on. Then of course we have different degrees of that. But
yeah, another thing that I've seen in the past that happens is where people come in and sell the sellers or the homeowner the dream that, right, realistically, the house is absolutely not worth $550,000, right? But they'll say, I can buy this for $550,000, and then they clip them at the knees while in escrow, right? Which is another dirty approach to things, right? Because now the homeowner has this. Unfortunately, they've already cashed the check, right? As soon as they signed the contract, they cashed the check in their mind, and now they just lost $200,000, right? It's not a good spot to be in, and definitely not how we operate and what we do. We look to make everything a fair thing, right? Fair for everybody. Everybody's a win-win type thing. So, everything.
Well, you just made me think. Not to throw anybody under the bus, but agents tend to do that a lot.
Yeah, I thought about them, but I didn't say them.
Right. Agents tend to do that a lot.
agents.
AGENT.
Yes, agents, real estate.
Apostrophe S.
Real estate agents.
Got
They tend to promise homeowners that I can list it and I can get you $500,000 or whatever that number happens to be, and then they'll let it sit on the market for a little while and then come back with the reality, which is usually the offer that I already made to the homeowner. Excuse me. So that's.
Yeah.
You made me
Close
think
to
of
it.
that. I mean, we do it
back
that a
out
lot.
their commission.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
well, there's other ones, right, where they'll come in and say, you know what, I'll get you qualified for a refi.
Right.
But first, to postpone, we need to file bankruptcy
And list the property.
and list the property.
Or at least get the listing signed.
Right.
Right.
So
I can only work
then-
with you if this listing is
Right, logic then becomes, well, hold on, how am I going to even qualify for a refi if he just filed for a BK and I've missed 6 months, 8 months,
Yeah.
12 months worth of payments? Odds are really against you to qualify for the refi, right? So yeah, there's a lot of dirty stuff that goes on out there, and we, we always talk about educating the seller, right? To
Right.
make sure that they clearly understand what's going on and what's happening versus just keep them the blindfolds on, if you will.
Yeah.
So one of the big things that I think I remember learning was the idea of price versus terms. You know, for me, when I first started, it was all about a number. Here's what the offer is, and that's it. And then being introduced to the idea of maybe it does make sense to pay a little bit more, assuming you get the terms that you want, you know, which does fold over into the creative that we were talking about the last couple of weeks. But, you know, it took me a while to get that. It took me a while to grasp the idea of, what do you mean I can pay more? Why does it make sense for me to pay more? Well, it makes sense to pay more because maybe you have the right terms in place that over time allows you to pay a little bit more, which now just creates another win-win. So I think in negotiations, looking at that, the terms versus the offer, that's hugely important as well.
Yeah, that goes back to the due diligence or the preparation of going into that negotiating table with that homeowner, knowing what your costs are going to be at your purchase price for acquiring that loan if there's money, and then if you do owner financing, how much you'll save by not getting that other loan, and then you can basically have that homeowner make what you would have been paying to that lending institution, wherever it was, private money, hard money. So, I mean, sometimes you can even offer more than what the seller is asking for, especially if you're doing buy and holds, right? But, our fix and flips, obviously, that's a little bit more difficult to structure, but I think Tim's done that a lot of times, right?
Yes.
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 So, yeah, I mean, as far as the negotiating, it's actually the most important. That's where we create the deal, the negotiating. I mean, they may be set at a price of, you know, like $250,000, and we're at $150,000. There's no way to get there. If they don't need to get paid immediately for some reason, like what if it's an income property that they have? I mean, there's tax advantages of them getting paid over time instead of all getting paid out. So it's all a conversation, and I mean, I think as far as the negotiating process, I mean, we can probably have like 3 or 4, like we can go through different scenarios, and I think we even talked about doing that maybe next time, getting like a whiteboard up with all the different scenarios, but.
Yeah,
That'd be a big
I
whiteboard.
agree. I think that'll be good. And so there's a few things in negotiations, right? So right now we're talking about negotiating with the seller.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we can start there, and then we find that in the preliminary title report, something else comes up, right? There's liens of some sort that nobody knew about. Something is going on, and that's a whole different type of negotiating that has to take place, right? Depending on what it is. If it's credit card debt, if it's code enforcement, if it's, you know, what have you, right?
Cloud on title.
Just something going on with it, right? That causes additional issues. So a lot of times we're able to create more opportunity because those things exist, right? Because and it allows us, to your point, to maybe give more money because we know that we can negotiate certain things down to a certain level, right?
Yep.
Like credit card debt, you know, anything that's not what do you call it? Attached to a specific asset, if you will.
Yep.
Right. So, other than the fact that they attach the lien.
Yeah,
So-
which that reminds me of what Melina often says. I mean, in that negotiating process, we are problem solvers. So she often says that. But is she gonna? She's like,
So we talk about it a lot, and every section we've covered, we've always come back to this. For the existing club members that are out there, there needs to be that point of recognizing when to bring in a senior investor who can go handle that type of negotiation. You know, thinking about how our real estate business have changed over just a few years that I've been part of the club. You know, things of that art of negotiation. You know, there's some areas that I'm comfortable talking to the homeowner about, and then there's other areas that just get, you know, too deep for me in that negotiation. That you know.
What makes it too deep?
Wow.
He almost dropped an F-bomb right there.
Live on Facebook.
Can we get some baby wipes?
He wasn't gonna say Frank either.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm very
Hey,
well.
Melanie.
thank you.
Hey.
Hello. Do you should get another chair?
I'm just trying
No,
to
no,
think where
I'm
you
fine.
came
No,
from.
no, I'm
sit over
fine.
here.
I'm your sit. No, I'm good.
I'll sit on the
I'm good.
stool.
I'll stand right here.
All right.
My question still stands.
I think what I was thinking about was thinking back to when we first started, negotiations almost seemed a lot more simple. Maybe because of how the market's changed. You know, the fact that you are getting more and more creative deals that are out there. You know, more and more negotiations for me are taking place versus what for me seemed a lot easier way back when at the start, where, you know, a lot more of the deals were in that short sale category versus people that have equity within the properties that now becomes a bigger, more different conversation.
So that almost sounds like before somebody else was doing the negotiating for me. Now I have to do the negotiations myself.
That's what I heard. Yeah,
That's kind of what I heard.
that's what I heard. Yeah.
Man, it got really difficult because now I have to
think
do it.
it's just
Right.
the learning process and learning more about
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely.
Didn't even know, like,
Yeah,
this is outside of my knowing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
'Cause
Yeah.
it's always a conversation, always. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's just not always a possibility.
Right. So I think that's a really good point. Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can Kevin? Can you guys can hear him
us
live?
okay?
Give her the mic. I think it'll be
Give her
better.
the mic. It doesn't even sound like the mic is on.
No, it's good.
Is it on? Okay. So I think what you said is a really important, it's a great thing. What you said was you used the term deep.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'd just like to know, where do we get deep from that? Like, it's a really interesting thing because that seemed too deep for you. So now it's because, well, you tell me why. What do you mean by deep? Because I think that's actually a really important key. I think it's a total mindset, and I think the way you view it, John, as being too deep is absolutely indicative of what's really happening in your mind, and then it'll manifest in the conversation.
So is it deep? Because I relate deep in the context you used it as difficult.
Me too. Yeah. I was thinking deep, like, you know, like, yeah, maybe.
More in depth, more complicated. You know, if I think of a simple idea, you know, there is a negotiation in working with that homeowner to have them understand the idea of a short sale and negotiate with the homeowner that why it makes sense they come work with us.
So it's not about money then.
No, it's more. Well, you mean money in the way of when now we work with more homeowners. It does become that conversation about money. Yes.
You know what just reminds me of?
Yeah.
I was with my student. We were door knocking, and I think this is kind of what sparked me to want to.
He has a mic.
Oh, so it's just me and you.
This is kind of what sparked me. I wanted to do this today on negotiating because we were talking with a homeowner, and they were wanting to sell their property, but we weren't going to buy the house. It was a beautiful house, turnkey condition, wanted to top market. So, you know, in speaking with her, we were able to connect. She gave her a hug. It was a great conversation. And I told her, which at that moment I realized, you know, when you're an investor and you have a certain amount of deals that you're doing and you're going out and you're negotiating, you have more leverage, more power than that. I don't have to have that deal. I can have a very unattached conversation with this homeowner, able to establish better rapport. They can completely get that I don't really need to buy the property. Just
Huge.
finding out, I'm investigating. It is huge. And as a student, not having a deal and not in the process of one, they're like, you know, I just joined this club. I needed to make some money now. So they're going out and they've given away all their power, all their
Yes.
leverage because
Yes.
they're desperate for the deal. That homeowner can say, all right, if you buy my property, if you did the math, you might make 10 grand. That new student is like, hallelujah, 10 grand, right?
Right.
And that's such a thin profit margin on a property here in Riverside. So on the other side, once you get experience and you've done deals and you have, you know, properties you're doing, now you do have that helps you have, that's the first power. That's the first leverage you have over that homeowner is that I don't have to buy that property. And once again, once we establish that we have that, it's our responsibility to be a responsible investor and not take full advantage of that leverage that we're able to create by being in a place where I don't have to buy every property, or I'm not driven that I have to get a deal on this, and that homeowner can just basically say, you know, make me pay more than I would be willing to. So that's
Right.
what that
That's
means.
really good. That's really good. I felt like it was and I think what Frank is saying is right. I think Frank actually gave you the, like the answer, the anecdote to what you were talking about. Don't you think?
I don't know.
I feel like that's the anecdote right there, because what you're really saying is it's more difficult to have a conversation with a homeowner about the price that you're going to give them for probably the biggest asset they've ever had in their entire life.
Sure, I get you.
Right? And so you're like, I want to take that biggest thing that you have at the deepest discount I can possibly get it at. Right? It's really what's happening.
I was coming more from the perspective of the knowledge aspect of being able to negotiate with people. I've listened to some people have conversations. One of the recent deals that we just got into, thinking about, I wanted to be there, but I couldn't because I was on stage. But, Oscar and Tim were having that conversation with the homeowner, and I would have loved to have heard how that went, because it's that negotiation side of a creative equity split is not a conversation that I've been part of very often. So when I mean deep, I mean kind of more in depth as to there's more moving parts, there's more options, there's more ways to become more creative, and that then comes down to, let's say, my own confidence to have that conversation. Not necessarily, hey, I want to take your house at the biggest discount. It's not about that conversation. It's just there's more moving parts to it.
Got it.
So it kind of swings
That's
back
good.
to the art of negotiation versus the creative aspect to, see things that, me and Tim were talking yesterday. We were talking about a possible, well, it's not really a lead at the moment, but it's a homeowner that me and a student are working with, and we're just trying to help them solve their problem. And I explained to the student, I don't see this as being an opportunity for an investment property, and I want to make you clear on that right now our goal is serving that homeowner. And they fully understand where we stand on that. Now, in talking to Tim, he may know some people that may be interested in their specific scenario that maybe could turn into something very small. But for somebody out there, it's a different investment opportunity. So for us, it's less about the negotiation right now. For me, it's more about I'm presenting you with all the options that are out there, and none of them work for me anyway. So it's a different style of negotiations, because I'm still negotiating because I want to do my duty and work with them and help them and do everything that we need to do. But I know at the end of the day, it's not going to be something that I'm going to work on myself. Does that make sense?
From what you just said, John,
You don't have to raise your hand.
I just wanted to let people know that I was going to speak so that I don't speak over somebody else. But what I heard you say, John, is that you don't think that it's not necessarily negotiating because you're just presenting the options, but at the end of the day, I mean, that's all we really do is present the options. For me, I've read tons and tons of books about negotiating, and there's typically, all these little techniques, right? Sit on the same side of the table, shake hands firmly.
Take them to dinner.
All this stuff. Right, there's typically all these little techniques, but there came a point when I realized that all of those techniques I do naturally when I'm there really to serve the homeowner. When the homeowner has a problem and we're fixing that problem, it's natural for me to sit next to the homeowner and talk about the problem. Because we together, me and the homeowner, we're solving that problem together.
Yeah.
It's natural, it's not a technique. So
You mean like basic communication skills?
yeah, it's just normal stuff, and that's the key. For me, it comes down to, the negotiating comes down to really just finding out what the homeowner needs, and then providing those needs, right? Typically, the homeowner will need something other than money, really.
Almost always.
They think they need money because they think that money is the only way they can get what they really want.
It's the
But
easiest
if-
way to quantify.
Right.
Put a number to it.
But if we can find out what they really need and then provide that, then we get to keep the money, really. But at the end of the day, if we're doing that, and then the homeowner says something along the lines of, I just need a place to stay.
Right.
Well, okay, fine. There's no more negotiating. I'll make that happen, right? And you don't have to have the knowledge of how to make that happen. You don't have to have the knowledge of what contracts am I going to put in place. You don't need any of that knowledge. What you do is you say, yeah, we can do that. The numbers work on my side, and we can provide that for you. Let's make it happen. And then we just go to work to make it happen. You know, it kind of reminds me of the motorhome.
Right.
We've talked about the motorhome transaction, but
That's not, when I think about the motorhome, it wasn't really a creative deal.
No.
You were creative in the solution to purchase the property. It wasn't a creative acquisition.
There was
No.
there was no creative
It was-
structure to
It was just a negotiating.
Right.
It was
a
actually,
creative
it was
conversation.
actually in the
tit for
negotiating.
tat.
yeah, it was all in the negotiating. And at the end of the day, when he said, I need a motorhome, and I said, well, what if I gave you a motorhome? Would you sell me the house at this price? And he said, yeah. And I was like, great, let's make a contract. And then inside I'm thinking, holy cow, I don't have a motorhome. I better call Oscar. We need to get to work and find a motorhome, and we need to find a motorhome that fits into the numbers.
Yeah, and then he negotiated the deal on the motorhome.
Yes, we did. Then we went and got the motorhome at a deep enough discount to where it made sense, and then we made the deal happen. But that's the key for me in the negotiating is
Yeah. What was the
Solving the
motorhome,
problem.
like actual what they want, like the value, and you got it for how much less?
I think they were asking like 18. We bought it for 9.
Okay, like
That's like a 50% discount.
that's awesome.
Half off.
Half off. I was thinking about like the conversation, like when you know, somebody doesn't have their house for sale, and we're talking through their options because there's not a for sale sign in the yard. We know that they're trying to save their home, whether it's a loan modification, or they filing bankruptcy, all these things. So we're finding out. We're going there to see where they're at in that process, see if we can serve them or help them. Very rarely will I talk to somebody, which is kind of strange. In the last few days, I've spoken to multiple homeowners who've never heard of Keep Your Home California, which I was a little shocked. Because most of the time I go and I'm talking to them, hey, have you heard of this? And I'm like, yeah, we applied, they denied us. And this week, they're like, what's that? I'm like,
A
huh.
lot of money.
What do you mean California's trying to help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So in that process, I'm definitely not negotiating. For me, it's more of the rapport building. That's where, when we go and serve the homeowner, that's where I'm able to establish the rapport, the trust. And then, again, not to abuse that power or that trust. That's the key difference to what we do versus what may be taught at other places, because we're doing it. We see what works. We're in the, you know, we're out in the trenches. We're doing it, and it just doesn't work to go out there and make all these awesome properties. It just doesn't, because everybody's doing that. So when we're out there building rapport with people who have not decided to sell their house yet, and we find out where they're at in the process, through that's the best time to build that rapport and that trust when they see that we're truly out there to serve them. And then when they do decide to sell, whether there's equity or it's a short sale, then we can begin that process of the negotiating and see what works best. And then again, not abusing the power that we have, because that a lot of the times once we get there, that homeowner is dedicated to selling their property. They like literally say, I want you to make money on this because you've helped me through this process.
yeah.
You've gotten me, you know, all these months. So
At least the ones with a conscience.
right.
You know, the other thing that came to mind, John, when you were talking was there's a bit of agility that's required when you are having that money conversation with the seller, because once you identify what it is, right, to your point, once you identify what it is that they really need, now you have to be think on your toes, right, and figure out, oh, like you said, oh crap, right? Can I do this? Yes or no? And quickly decide that, because you can't say, oh, let me go think about that for the next 2 days.
No.
Right? That's not something that can happen.
I mean,
So-
pretty much you can solve don't you think?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like there's some ridiculous, I feel like the motorhome was the most out of
Outlandish.
not outlandish, but just out of the normal scope, right, of things that people need.
Yeah.
Right, like, and actually
It's
very
pretty
specific.
specific.
Yeah, which is actually really nice.
Yeah.
You
Made
know?
it simple.
Right.
not
So,
for-
yeah, most of the time it's the basics. It usually has everything to do with where are they gonna go? And how are they gonna get there? And what are they gonna do with all their
When.
stuff?
And how can you
Right.
provide that solution?
Absolutely.
Right.
So it comes down to asking the right questions.
Yes.
The art of negotiation has to be having all that information, which is what Frank's talking about. Asking the right questions at the door, seeing what it is that they need, you know. But it still comes down to I suppose where I was going with it from the first part I said was, there's a knowledge base to it.
Oh, of course.
There's an incredible knowledge base to it.
Absolutely.
So the idea of my conversation with Tim yesterday, I didn't see what Tim saw. So for me, when I talk about deep or more in depth, it's sometimes you just don't know,
Awesome.
as you say, don't know what you don't know.
Sure.
And I can pass that to somebody else who maybe sees something different. You know?
Stick with us, kid.
That
It's a learning process. It's always a learning
It is.
process.
Yes,
It's always.
Yeah, so
It's-
Chris can be Batman. You can be a beautiful mind. Like, remember that?
There, yeah, that guy went crazy.
So he's
though.
not. So he's not Robin.
Not much different.
Not Robin.
No, not with spandex.
No.
No,
I don't really know what Robin
Or
did.
shorts.
I don't know what Robin did
But
either.
what did Robin really do?
He
Aside
laughed
from
at Batman's
saying-
jokes.
He did.
Holy
He made a
cow,
holy-
Batman.
He made a lot of holy.
How come he never made any of the
Told
movies?
Batman how amazing it was. Batman, you're a genius.
Yeah, he's totally good. He really was. That's all he did, and he came up with like holy, yeah. Car racing down the street, Batman.
Get off topic.
You're welcome.
So, all right. So a lot of moving parts in negotiating. Obviously, communication, knowledge are critical in it, right? Because you do need to be able to steer the conversation by asking the right questions
Yep.
that are going to lead to decisions.
Yes.
Ultimately, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
when we were talking about, it reminds me, there's this property that I looked at, like, it was during the summer. And the homeowner was representing that he had multiple offers, multiple, just everybody wanted this thing. So I gotta come in high. So I did all my due diligence, everything that I had to do, and then I concluded that he may be making inaccurate statements about how many people wanted his property. So
At
this
that
was
price.
at that price.
He was embellishing.
Yes, so there might be times to push away from the negotiating table. I think that, like, you get
a
to a
great point.
stalemate, and it's time to, all right, well, let me go and research what you're talking about, wherever it is. So I pushed away from him a few times. So this was in the summer. Now we're in March now. A few days ago, contacted me again. He had told me he had it's a big property with duplex on. He had told me that those duplexes, they're sold. I got almost what you were gonna pay for everything. I'm like, okay, well, good for you.
You should take that and run.
Yeah, I told him go for it. Apparently, he didn't sell anything. It's still for sale, and the prices come down again. And from then till now, I was anticipating that he might come back. So I have a bunch of contingencies together, and I'm gonna make him an offer today. But that's been a negotiating process. That's months.
Hey Frank, is your offer going to be higher or lower or the same?
Lower.
Lower. It's gonna be lower. It's not gonna be the same. No, not by a long shot.
Definitely not going to be higher.
It's definitely gonna be higher. Yeah.
Wow.
And he won't do anything creative then, but all this time has passed. I mean, he might be more open to that now.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, right, is that we can actually talk about this a few times
Yeah, there's a lot.
and dive into things. So I like the idea of putting up the whiteboard.
Deep.
It's so deep.
Yeah, I think we've
Depth and breadth.
Depth and
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
we'll, yeah. So I think that this is a good primer, anyways, right?
Yeah.
It's a good primer for what's to come, and no, that's cool. I like it. Good
I
stuff,
like it
guys.
too. It's great. I mean, I don't know if people are watching this. Like, the information that you guys are giving right now, I'm not kidding you. I think that it is like, I think it's really, really valuable. So much more valuable than reading a silly book. So, I mean, I'm just saying. I think it's good to read books and stuff like that, but I just think that what you guys are giving is just fantastic.
Well,
Bravo.
there's the
Bravo.
knowledge,
Bravo.
there's the knowledge, and then there's the applied knowledge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Totally
Of
different.
course,
So
it's huge. It's huge. It takes away all of the mystery surrounding the idea of the art of the deal, right?
Right.
It's beautiful. I think
Sounds
it's
like a
awesome.
book.
I'm really proud.
Art of the deal. Sounds like
I'm
a
just
book.
saying.
So, on a side note, so great information. It looks like we're absolutely going to take this on for at least a couple more weeks, right?
Yeah.
And maybe longer. We'll see how far this goes. But want to throw something else out there, and this is really for non-club members, right? Because the club members that are watching this, you guys know who we are, what we're all about. You know where this information is coming from. You know how we teach and so forth. But recently we made a decision. The 5 of us are holding. What do you want to call them, Frank? Open houses? Not really an open house,
It's
right?
like a inside or a free preview into what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you that are not club members currently and are interested in learning more about what we do, how we teach, those types of things, I think just let us know on the fan page there. Reach out to us, direct message us, and ask the questions, right? And we'll get back to you as quickly as possible and let you know what that looks like and when the next time we're going to be getting together and sharing more information is. So anything you want to add on any of that?
No?
No, I mean, I think these what we're putting out content to people that are interested in real estate. And, there's so many places to go.
Yeah.
I think this is a great environment for people to come and learn and actually rub elbows with people that have gone through the entire process of a successful system. I've been doing this or working with Dave and Lena since 2009, and I know how they helped me and they got me going. I know it works, and I just wish we could duplicate it or be able to do it more, because we really it's just so hands-on. You can't have it you can't fill a hotel room full of hundreds of people to train, but those that we can reach out to and help to get to where they want to get, I want to be able to do that as much as possible.
Yeah, and a quick side note. So again, it's for non-club members. That's requirement number one, right? It's non-club members, because club members already have the benefit of club meetings, training sessions, mastering the mindset meetings, all this stuff that goes on, right? All this stuff that goes, all of this.
All of this.
But so for those that are not club members, here's what I want to be clear on, is that when you do DM us and we respond to you and you decide that it makes sense to come out and hang out with us for a couple hours, whatever it is, it's not a pitch fest. We're not going to be selling you anything. There's no upselling of anything whatsoever. It's really just you coming out, meeting us, getting to know us, building relationships, and seeing where things go from there. And the information we're going to give is what we're doing in our businesses today, not 10 years ago, but now, right? So,
Yeah.
cool stuff. All right. So with that, hey, any questions? We're good? All right. So you guys out there need to start asking questions. So I'm going to call you out, because I'm going to go later on and see who was on there. And I'm pretty doggone sure that you should have questions on negotiating, especially the club members.
Yeah.
We're going to check you.
We might have a class on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are thinking about adding a class.
Frank is thinking about putting a class together. Attaboy, Frankie.
Not as badly as you got him.
So with that, hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back again next week. Melina, thanks for dropping by and popping in and scaring the bejesus out of him. So tune in again next week, 12:12. We'll be back and at it again. Take care. We'll continue the negotiation conversation. Take care.
Peace out.
Cheers.